from him for aid?
Broad strokes, not specific commitments, but broad strokes. And just some of the conditions that were being bandied about just seem to be, for me, a little bit of noise, a little bit political. At the end of the day, we're living in. And if you're not believing science, you have to believe your own eyes, your own lived experience, and the reality.
Welcome, Patriots. Today we're going to carefully watch a detailed interview that many indeed consider a significant political disaster. It's about the governor of California, who, while trying to explain the wildfires on CNN, really stirred things up, as you will see. And he found himself in quite a very tricky situation on CNN. So get ready for a show of disastrous statements trying to divert attention. And when a struggling governor meets with the president, perhaps in a private meeting, what potentially happens behind the scenes, discussing various matters, you're going to find out now in this video.
Lawmakers are holding a hearing on the California wildfires 1 month after the deadly blaze began ripping through the Los Angeles area. Dozens of people were killed and thousands of acres destroyed. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out. 1 month on, the fires are fully contained. And now officials are focusing on the massive and grueling cleanup ahead. The economic damage is estimated to be tens of billions of dollars. Yesterday, California Governor Gavin Newsom met with President Trump and held bipartisan meetings with lawmakers trying to secure disaster aid for his state's fire victims. Governor Newsom joins us now for an exclusive interview following his meeting with President Trump yesterday. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a very busy trip for you here in Washington. So you spoke to President Trump for more than an hour. Tell us about that meeting. How did it go?
He was very gracious to accept the meeting in very short order. We extended an open hand. I've said this often, not a closed fist, and reestablished a partnership and relationship to this fire, to the emergency that's still at hand as it relates to toxic materials that need to be cleaned up, to debris removal, to people, thousands and thousands of families whose lives have been torn asunder. And so it was incredibly productive.
Did you get any commitments from him for aid?
Broad strokes, not specific commitments, but broad strokes. And I have just all the confidence in the world that it's going to be a strong partnership moving forward. Look, cameras have moved on. And the devastation now is truly being absorbed. It's remarkable. As you said, it's just been a month. And people are just coming to grips with the trauma of their lives being completely destroyed, memories, memorabilia, generational homes. And so we're trying to do everything we can to distill a sense of well-being. And it's critical that the relationship between the President of the United States and the state of California remain strong and firm in our resolve to fix this.
And we will continue to cover the wildfires and the aftermath and everything on this show. I can assure you of that. You have also been on the Hill meeting with lawmakers. President Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested that conditions should be attached to any wildfire aid for California, with Johnson claiming state and local leaders were derelict in their duties. Was that discussed during your meetings, and where does that stand, if so, with getting aid in exchange for conditions being met?
It wasn't discussed, and I hope we can move beyond that. Look, I understand the foundational conditions. I think that exists with most things that Congress does in the relationship between states. The states' relationships with cities, there's conditions attached. But some of the conditions that were being bandied about just seem to be, for me, a little bit of noise, a little bit political. At the end of the day, we're all in this together. The president was at a prayer breakfast this morning. I remember Father Cause telling me, we're many parts, but one body. When one part suffers, we all suffer. This notion that we're all in this together. We're in there to take care of the folks in Louisiana, in the Speaker's District. We're here for the folks in North Carolina, Californians, that is, Georgia. People have been impacted by disasters and emergency. And the American spirit is to lend a hand and provide that support. And I expect that will happen for California.
As you know, that President Trump has pressed for California requiring voter ID and changing to the water system. Did that come up with your meeting with him?
We talked about both, yeah.
You talked about both? And did you say you would?
We've been in an ongoing conversation for over, I feel like I told the president when he was on the tarmac last week in Los Angeles, I said, we're picking up on the last conversation we had around water 4.5 years prior. So I will say this, he's very focused on that issue. He certainly targeted some of that in terms of some of the actions he took by executive order.
2 billion gallons of water.
And so we had and that's why it was an extended conversation. I didn't even know people knew how long.
Newsom tries to paint a picture of cooperation with Trump. But let's be honest, partnership is a word he's using to hide the lack of real commitments. It seems like the only thing he managed to get was a photo op for the media. And when politics mixes with necessity, Is the people of California really getting what they need?
Conversation was, but it was an extended conversation, and so it was spirited. And look, and it's exactly
Spirited. How so? Bring us into that.
because we were just it was an engaging conversation. You know what it was? It was a two-way conversation, and that's what it should be. I mean, just different points of view, expressing a different understanding of the nuances on the ground, but an appreciation to get something done.
Did you tell them the 2 billion gallons of water didn't help with the wildfire recovery?
I think it's been well covered.
Okay.
Understood. But, look, I kept going back. It wasn't about focusing on the disagreements. It was about focusing on what we have in common. What we have in common is a desire to support the people of LA and also recognize that in 2028, we've got the Olympics coming to Southern California. We have an opportunity of a lifetime in the next 3 years to do something extraordinary. And I will say this is true, and it's factual, and you got to call balls and strikes. Lee Zeldin is doing an amazing job. He's on the ground today in Los Angeles. They are moving the first phase of the debris removal at record pace. And I think it's that mindset that we brought to the meeting and the mindset that came out of that meeting. The president wants to do something that's never been done, and that is address this crisis with a degree of sophistication and focus to get the job done and get people's lives back.
Your relationship with Trump certainly has been interesting over the years. It seems to have taken a more positive turn lately. I mean, he recently called you Newsom.
And not just recently.
He's
been doing that for years.
Did he say it in the Oval Office yesterday?
Yeah, we had some fun with that. Look.
Okay. So tell us about this. How much of your positive turn, I have to ask this because this is what people are wondering, has to do with the fact you need aid for your state.
Yeah, but it's not even that. We had this relationship. I will say, one of the more, I'll leave it to more objective minds, but it's one of the more interesting relationships in politics because we had this relationship going back during COVID. I mean, we were involved in 100 lawsuits going back and forth. I mean, you could look at the tweets back then, calling me a clown, the worst governor, and yet we were still working together. And all that was a little bit of noise. So it just feels so familiar. And in that respect, I want to continue to respect the office of the presidency, to respect his authority, and to also engage in a constructive dialogue when it comes to issues of emergencies. But again, we had that foundation of a relationship for years during the COVID crisis, and it was a great partnership then, interestingly.
So it sounds like publicly you guys kind of trade barbs, and then privately you can joke about it, is what it sounds like.
And it's and it's a joke, and it's not. It's frustrating for people. We're sort of chasing headlines. We're tracing tweets. But at the end of the day, what matters to me is what matters. Control what you can control, and focus on people and results and getting things done. And that's I think was demonstrably the case yesterday in the meeting.
You previously mentioned the timeline for rebuilding would be 6 to 9 months. Is that going to happen? And should people rebuild in some parts of California, given how high the fire risk is?
You can't rebuild the same. So we have to rebuild with science. We have to build with climate reality in mind. We have to look at infrastructure, redundancy, systems, ingress, egress as it relates to emergency management and planning, materials. All of that is being reviewed and reconsidered, and with the latest iterations in terms of understanding and technology. And I say technology in the context of how, again, we build the infrastructure to keep it safe, to address undergrounding of lines, how we address the larger issues of redundancy in terms of systems. But more important than anything else is the need to get the debris removed. 30 days to do the hazardous waste. We want to get 6 to 9 months, the rest of the debris done. Concurrently, people are getting permits. So this is all happening, rolling together, and we want to see construction very shortly. And in the next few years, we want to see hundreds, thousands of homes rebuilt.
But I think there's a big question about how do some Californians do that, right? You have State Farm announcing that it has an average 22% interim rate hike for homeowners. The fair insurance plan for the state is just bogged down right now. Your dad, I believe, is on that plan, if I recall. Californians are saying they're not getting the help they need from FAIR. It's really confusing.
Well, FAIR's not a state plan. It's not a taxpayer-funded plan. It's a syndicate pool run by the insurance market itself. And it's the insurer of last resort. And it's existed back to Ronald Reagan in 1968. As it relates to that plan and their exposure, they have reinsurance, a significant amount of reinsurance.
It's hilarious how Newsom is trying to divert attention from what really needs to be done. Help for the people? Calling them political noise. Maybe he should worry less about that noise and more about his leadership. After all, who is really paying the price? As always, it's the Californians. And they are the ones who lost everything, right? And then the question remains, will climate change? Is it just an excuse for poor management? Check out the next video.
We feel strongly at this moment, and again, this changes in real time, that the plan will be able to absorb the losses ultimately. Now, as it relates to the larger issue of the insurance market, not unique to California by any stretch of the imagination, what's happening with insurance, and this is the reality, the new reality of extremes, extreme heat, extreme drought. You have droughts and rain bombs. You have flooding at the same time you're dealing with droughts, all happening concurrently. There's a new reality, the world we're living in. And if you're not believing science, you have to believe your own eyes, your own lived experience. And the reality is the insurance market understands it better than anyone else. The market and Mother Nature's are going to have to change the way we live and do business in the context of how we plan, how we do land use, zoning into the future along the lines of your question. We have to wake up to this reality. We cannot be in denial about what's going on with Mother Nature, again, around the globe, not just in the state of California.
Just to sort of pin you down, what does that mean for the rebuilding in some of these high-risk areas?
Just more sophisticated design and planning. Remember, Altadena, many of those homes were done in the 20s and 30s and 40s for a world that no longer exists from a climate perspective. And so the ability to absorb a deeper understanding as you rebuild it presents itself anew in a profound and, we hope, impactful way. So I'm concerned about it, but I'm not concerned about our resourcefulness to address it with the most modern standards anywhere in the world. By the way, California leads the nation already in building zoning standards. Our ability now to take it to the next level, to be a model for the rest of the country, presents itself.
All right, I know we have to let you go. I just want to quickly end. You mentioned the tarmac meeting with President Trump. You said it was a continuation of a conversation you had had with him. He came there to California to tour the wildfire damage. Bring us into that. I know a lot of us were wondering what was happening in that moment.
I just, again, back to open hand, not a closed fist, welcoming back to the state of California. And, I don't want, people start reading lips here.
That's why I want to go straight to the source.
We started talking about water. I mean, we were in, middle of a conversation that we ended at the end of his term.
You went right into water in that conversation.
He's very focused on water. And I appreciate that. I'm focused on water. It's one of the most, I'm in California. This is a top issue for us. And we also extended yesterday different discussions about other areas we can agree that he could move the needle in California water policy. So that's a little bit of preview. We hope some good things come from that.
All right, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Wilson often talks about the new reality of climate change as if it's a seemingly almost magical excuse for all his problems. But the truth is that indeed, many of the challenges faced by California, it's a lack of planning and ineffective policies. Maybe, perhaps it's time we should really consider stopping blaming Mother Nature and take full responsibility. And indeed, Newsom's interview with CNN was really disastrous. He tried to occupy Mother Nature all the time and hide the real problems that California is facing due to poor management. This indeed is the truth. The reality is that California absolutely needs genuine and effective leadership and practical solutions, not more empty speeches. And let's demand accountability from all the leaders together. And if you're also in this, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos, share this video with your friend, and also leave your opinion. Very important to me. Thank you all. See you in the next video.